Happy, healthy, beautiful day to everyone in attendance, live and actually watching in the replay. My name is Eric Higgins. I was going to say I'm a functional medicine doctor. I'm not. I'm an actor and a holistic health coach. Our keynote speaker, however, is an expert in functional medicine. I'm calling out of Portugal right now. And on this call, we're going to be speaking about migraines and headaches and looking at a functional medicine approach to that challenge. This is something that a lot of people are dealing with, more people than you can imagine. And there are ways to help resolve this. Life is about enjoyment. Life is about the quality of life, not pain management. We want to make sure we're addressing root cause. And that is exactly what Dr. Rakowski has been an expert in for his whole career as a clinical nutritionist, as a chiropractor, as an acupuncturist, and also an electrical engineer, which he took his skill set into the body with that as well, which is quite interesting how everything works in that regard. But Dr. Bob, welcome to the call. How is life today in Houston?
Yeah, it's an epic, beautiful, amazing, and Rob Adams, spectacular day. So thank you that I missed spectacular. But you know what? Life is always good. And to follow that up, it's what we make of it. You know, I've had so many good conversations with patients today. You know, and one asked me, they said, "Are you always in a good mood?" And I said, "Well, not always, but it's my default setting. And if I get away from it, I try to get back from it to it as quickly as I possibly can." And I think we have more control over our lives than often we give ourselves credit for. And if we take that control, well, then we can create whatever we want. And I think that's what this is all about, right? Creating a body that feels good, a brain that feels good, a life that feels good, and a world that is good.
I love that. I mean, it really does come down to us. We are the ones who make the choice to make the absolute most of what we have, where we are, and what we're doing. So I'm grateful to have found my way in life, to be surrounded by great people like yourself, people who have such a skill set and knowledge set and a mentorship set to be able to teach people to live their best life through health, happiness, and success across the board. So I'd love to just start this call, first and foremost, to just ask you, for anyone who's not familiar with functional medicine, you know, you've been teaching doctors functional medicine and nutrition for over 3 decades. What exactly is the approach with functional medicine as opposed to traditional medicine?
Well, I like the way you answered that rather than a definition, right? So the approach is, let's figure out what's really causing the problem. And too often people, you know, if they're going to go to a practitioner that has tools to reduce pain, like a drug, you know, they might say, "Hey, my head hurts." Well, I've got something for you. Here's a drug that'll make your head not hurt. Then it hurts again tomorrow and next week. And well, what's the solution? Keep doing that drug. Well, sadly, there's probably the majority of doctors that people are seeing are offering that type of solution, where we might ask the question, how long have you had these headaches? What do they start? Is there a particular timing? You know, do you notice that it's somehow related to food or exercise or sleep or stress or God knows what? But ultimately, when we start looking at as many variables as we can possibly think of, and I talk about the Magnificent Seven: eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. Can each of these be involved with migraine or regular headaches? Well, they absolutely can. And a skilled practitioner in partnership with the patient can figure that out and solve it. And we've had wonderful success with that over the last 31 years.
Beautiful. I think that is the right approach, the absolute best approach. The greatest people serving approach is to really look at all the elements at play. You know, that's so important, because there's a lot of poor information going around, and you know, what you don't know sometimes can kill you, and nothing is more serious when it comes to your health in that regard. So do your due diligence, get some great information. And as you said before, Dr. Webb, don't take health advice from someone who doesn't demonstrate health or has a great referral line of people who have demonstrated health. I think that's a good place to go from. So when it comes to the causes of, or well, not to the causes, but actually the differences of migraine versus headache, what is the main difference between the two, Dr. Bob?
It's a matter of degree, you know, and it's very, very subjective, but it's a matter of intensity, duration, sometimes related to auras and things like that. But ultimately, you know, picture the migraine is just the headache that nobody wants. You know, it's the one that can be profoundly debilitating. And when I make that statement, what I tell people is that the number one cause of disability in females ages 15 to 49 is migraine headaches. And, you know, there's a hormonal component to that. But when we start looking at this whole concept of a headache, I'm fortunate in that my life is such that I don't get many. And when I do, they're not much. But of the entire world, it's estimated that only 1 in 100 people don't have headaches throughout their entire life. Pretty fascinating that somehow, some way, the way we're wired and the stressors that we take, and that's what I heard Matt say, is stress was the challenge that could create headaches for him. And that's in the medical literature. And fascinatingly enough, they find out that all these issues with stress, whether it's head pain, chronic inflammatory process, depression, things like that, the neurotransmitter GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, very powerful from a pharmacology model at making the headache go away, making the pain go away, making the challenge go away. So certainly brain chemistry is a big player in that. But the difference between migraine and headache is a matter of intensity.
And when it comes to the causes, I know you were talking about root cause earlier and really looking at the source of what is not operating well with the body. What do you see is a common cause of migraine and headache?
Yeah, I'm gonna give a very generic answer, and then I'm gonna get more specific. Often when I share results with patients or reported findings, what's causing the problem, I may start with a statement that is, you haven't made enough of the healthy choices that you need, given your body, your genetics, to manifest the health that you deserve in the pain-free lifestyle. And so we could go with 4, I call them the deadly quartet: stress, toxins, malnutrition, physical inactivity. And they might be in that order in terms of causing headaches. Or we could go with the magnificent 7: eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. But keep in mind, if we say that the person hasn't made enough healthy choices, well, then automatically they're empowered to find out, okay, what are those healthy choices? And if I make them, can I be headache free? And we found that absolutely people can be.
When it comes to chiropractic, obviously you're a chiropractor as well for a number of years. How impactful do you believe the posture is on migraines and headaches?
Well, it's certainly one of the top causes. And we could take it even further than headaches. Whole body pain and dysfunction can be a postural abnormality. And when we start looking, we have a population that sits. And it's been said, it's very easy to Google this, sitting is the new smoking. And what they're finding out is inactivity and postural distortion creates more global mayhem and challenges in ill health than even cigarettes, smoking. And there might be 2 reasons behind that. More people are sitting more, and thank God fewer people are smoking. And those that are beginning to realize that, every puff leads them closer to death and accelerates the process. But as I'm sitting here, and no one can see me sitting, so I'll stand up and maybe change my camera, or maybe I won't. But if I pick my leg up, I shorten my hip flexor. And when we sit, there's something in physiology called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demand. When my hips are flexed, I shorten my hip flexors over time. And when that happens, it pulls my low back or my lumbar spine forward. And when my lumbar spine goes forward, my thorax, my torso, my thoracic spine compensates by moving backward. And then my cervical spine moves forward. And by the way, that takes my head forward in a forward head posture. And Eric, if people study anatomy, what they're going to find is that there's these little muscles at the base of the skull called the occipital muscles and the suboccipital muscles. And when you see those, they're tiny, and just moving the head forward a little bit strains those muscles to a phenomenal level. And that starts pulling on the skull, and it can compress vasculature and have impact on neurology. And a forward head posture is significant in terms of creating headache and tension and things like that. When we look at chiropractors, one of my mentors said there's chiropractors who are technicians, and they're good at moving bones and making adjustments. And there are chiropractors who are doctors. And I'm happy to say that I'm going to consider myself one of those. And what does a doctor do? Instead of just providing an intervention, says, let's look at what caused it and let's try to reverse that. And I've had plenty of people get standing desks or set a timer to get up and move around every hour, stretch their hip flexors, bring their head back, bring their shoulders down and back. And ultimately, that's going to be the correction. But, can making a structural correction be powerful? Yeah, it absolutely can be. And, I would say the majority of headache patients that I've seen, I've been able to help with chiropractic. And then we throw in chiropractic, nutrition, acupuncture, lifestyle. And I might have said there's very few patients over the decades that I haven't been able to help. And they had something serious going on in their body. Like the most recent had a brain tumor, and thank God after 2 weeks of making minimal progress, I said, something's not adding up. Let's get a brain scan. And now he's had a successful surgery to remove a tumor. Thank God for that.
Absolutely. Nicely spotted. Nicely done, sir. When it comes to the medications, then, when let's say you go into your typical GP, you share, I don't know, you probably don't go into your typical GP, but if you were to, in theory, let's say someone is going in to see their general practitioner and they say they have migraines or headaches. And if that doctor doesn't ask about lifestyle, first and foremost, that should be a red flag. But there's typically medications that are given for that pain, but it's not really a great long-term solution for it, which comes with, of course, side effects as well. Could you just discuss that kind of protocol for people, and what do you see as a much better option?
Yeah, and I might even tell a story with that. So, we should be grateful for modern medicine because it does a lot of great things. But one of the things that it's done that's not so great is it gets people taking a quick fix rather than ultimately solving the challenge. Now, the guidelines on medication are published and they're very clear. People should use the lowest dose for the shortest duration, but there's plenty of people that are prescribed pain meds where they're taking it so consistently. And there was a crossover point in the US in 2008 where more people literally died from overdose of prescription pain meds than died in automobile accidents. And by the way, it's gone up since then because especially the category of opioids, those are profoundly addictive to, certain people. But, I'll tell a story. I was teaching a seminar and they had an individual come in that basically he said he was the #1 consumer in the world of a migraine drug called Imitrex. And, he had migraines every day for, at that point, something like 40 years. Oh. And I said, what the heck happened? Well, he had an automobile accident. And so this was long enough ago that when 40 years earlier, seatbelts weren't required. He flew through his windshield, broke the windshield with his head, had skull fractures, and literally, they thought he was dead. And thank God he survived, but he had headaches for his entire life. Well, one of the things that I've taught practitioners all over the world, and just a little deviation here, I tell people anything that's either eyes, ears, nose, or throat is cranial, the skull, until proven otherwise. And that would include the head too. So when we did cranial manipulation on this guy, and by the way, you can Google that, you can look at that. That's something that is doable with a skilled practitioner. It hurt like heck as we did it. In fact, he said he felt like someone beat him up. But the next day he woke up for the first time ever without having a migraine, or I shouldn't say first time ever, first time in 40 years. And within a week, he said, my God, I don't ever need Imitrex again. Medications, lowest dose, shortest duration, prudent use, okay, but not addressing cause and effect, relying on drugs instead of figuring it out. Now we have a problem because a drug without a side effect is not a drug. And we're already intoxicated. Toxins, #2 cause of death on the planet. #1, malnutrition. #2, toxins. Now that's, if you look at the medical literature, I actually think #1 is stress, and probably always has been, but slightly different topic on how we rank them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important for us to identify what's going on and getting good counsel in that regard. Just even a quick aside from myself, both my mum and a friend of mine here in Portugal now, a lady in her 80s, both visited their GPs in the last 6 months and were prescribed penicillin-based antibiotics and weren't asked, were they allergic to penicillin? And in both cases, they were, and started to experience these horrible side effects, and within a matter of a day needed to go back and just say, this is something seriously wrong here. Is there? So that kind of negligence, it's just not good enough. In this day and age, we want to make sure we're getting that good advice because it could be the difference of life and death. So we've got to be very careful. When it comes to menstrual cycle, I've seen this myself. I've heard of stories of women who have a particularly difficult time with migraines, especially during their menstrual cycle as well. What might be going on there, Dr. Bob, that might be causing such a severe response?
One, kudos to you and whoever submitted the questions about this link between hormones. But I don't read often to people, but I'm going to read this because the language is so powerful. This is a 2021 peer-reviewed medical study. And here's what it says. Migraine is ranked as the second highest cause of disability worldwide. So that's significant. By the way, low back pain, number one, and the first among women aged 15 to 49. Migraine is threefold higher among women than men. Reproductive hormones are clearly a key. So when you look at these menstrual migraines, these hormone-induced migraines, they are real, they are common, they are devastating to the point of being the top cause of disability in females in menstruating years. So, we might ask what's causing that. And here's what I can tell you has been successful in clinical practice. The data is clear. We're all estrogen toxic. There's estrogens in plastics, estrogens in pesticides, estrogens injected into animals. There are metalloestrogens, and we're loaded with them. And so ultimately, it's really the inability to clear estrogens and toxic estrogens, foreign estrogens, that build to a level that are triggering these migraines. Now, how can I make the statement? When I put women on an estrogen detoxification program with cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, Ganoderma, which by the way can clear xenoestrogens and metalloestrogens, and even functional medical foods that are proven to help clear estrogens, one of the first things we see is a decrease in the headaches and often a complete and total resolution, with that being our only intervention. So clinical experience says that it's really powerful to get people clearing their hormones. And so I'll share a quote. A researcher named Joe Collins wrote a book years ago called What's Your Menopause Type? And he made a statement. He said, estrogens, whether you make them, whether you take them, you need to get rid of them every day. Well, I realized that could be more complete. So estrogens, whether you make them, whether you take them, whether you're knowingly or unknowingly intoxicated by them, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, you need to get rid of them every day in a healthy way. And that's what functional foods, cruciferous vegetables, Ganoderma lucidum helps to do. It helps to clear these toxic estrogens in a healthy way, because there's a healthy way and a less healthy way, a risky way and a safer way. And it does it in the safe way.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And for me, it's probably my go-to super tool to help people to shift themselves into their best state of health is, of course, Ganoderma or reishi infused inside of coffee and tea. I would love to just veer off to this specifically for a moment. For some of you guys who don't know what reishi or Ganoderma is, being the world's top superfood, myself and Dr. Bob and a number of other people have just fallen in love with sharing this incredible health concept of health inside the habit, hidden inside of coffee and tea. Dr. Bob, could you touch on why is Ganoderma so powerful, or reishi? It's a couple of titles. Why it's so powerful for migraine and headaches and the pathways involved in that?
Well, Eric, the pathways would probably depend on the person. So I'll give some potential hypotheses, but I believe I'm sharing my screen on the Zoom. And this is the International Journal of Pharmacy. And picture, that's a powerful language, journal around the drug model. But here's what they said about Ganoderma. It says it is proved to completely eradicate migraine without side effects. That's a very, very, very powerful statement. So could it be that it's anti-inflammatory? Well, it certainly could be. And so it's anti-inflammatory by over a dozen proven mechanisms. Could it be that it's a GABA facilitator? And the answer is that it absolutely is. So now I'm going through my slides. I want to find that GABA component. And that's our reference here. This is 2020. And what they said is chronic stress is a trigger of headaches. GABA is the main mediator. And Ganoderma is a natural GABA facilitator. Well, could it be toxicity? And we know that there are toxin-induced headaches. And Ganoderma is one of the most powerful ways to clear toxins from the body. Could it be an allergy response? Well, it could be. And Ganoderma is a powerful allergy modulator. And we start going down the board and say, well, which one works for the person? I don't know. Maybe it's all the above. But either way, here's what we know. It works very, very well. And if I go further into that article from the International Journal of Pharmacy, it says it completely eradicates migraines without side effects in the majority of patients. So not just, a few percent, even though if it did that, it'd be awesome. But how about the majority of patients? So pretty powerful there.
That is powerful. I would love to share my sister's testimony on that. You talked about side effects. She has suffered with migraine headaches for over 20 years. And for 18 of those years, she couldn't be on this call today, but I asked, could I share a testimony? She's happy for me to do so. But for 18 of those years, her go-to was sulfidine, which of course has codeine in it, which is a very addictive substance. I believe codeine is actually part of the drug heroin, or it's found in trace amounts in that. So it is very addictive. And of course, it does have side effects, but she sent me her testimony again, just as a refresher. So that was her go-to for 18 years. It literally was holding her back in her life. She struggled with her sleep. She struggled with stress. It was affecting her work life as well, and obviously her family life. And she added in our reishi red tea, as well as our reishi hot chocolate, and has up to an 80% reduction in migraine pain, and also a huge reduction in the frequency of her migraines, and has found that her focus, her level of ability to focus during work has gone up so much. So she's super grateful for me badgering her and saying, hey, you need to try this stuff. It's really good. It's not me just trying to make a sale. This is allowing your body to rebalance itself. I'm no expert at what's going on internally. I know you've been struggling for that for years, but I do know that popping pills every time you can't face the light of day and you have to be inside of a dark room, there is something really, really wrong under the surface. So just wanted to share that testimony and ask you as well, what is so special about the combination of cordyceps and reishi in the red tea?
All right, so you asked about red tea. And you asked about cordyceps, and you asked about Ganoderma. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just on the fly, I'm going to pull up a table that was created by Paul Stamets. And he wrote the book Medical Mycology. And within that, he put together a table of the top medicinal mushrooms on the planet. Now, Paul Stamets, literally wrote the book on mushrooms, and he has the TED Talk, 6 Ways That Mushrooms Will Save the World, and very, very powerful. And when you start looking at these benefits, so you start looking at all these things that were proven across the top, and then you'll see that ultimately Ganoderma lucidum is the one that has easily the most amount of proven benefits. Now we fast forward, and actually, since this table was created, one of the things he had was sexual potentiator. Well, now they found out that it does that too, because it's a really good source of nitrate and nitric oxide. But number 2 was cordyceps. And when you start looking at these things and you go, well, how in the world do they work synergistically? And here's what they found when they decided to put it in red tea: phenomenally synergistic. So I like to tell the story of Eliud Kipchoge, who's the guy that ran a sub 2-hour marathon. And, there's plenty of people that don't want to honor that as, being a legitimate feat, because he had pace setters and he did it at sea level and it was an ideal day and everything else. But bottom line is the guy ran a sub 2-hour marathon, but he consumed red tea having Ganoderma and cordyceps in it throughout. So, lots of phenomenal synergy, alkalizing effect, calming effect. One of the benefits of the cordyceps is oxygenation, and that's probably why he was drinking it, because endurance athletes, specifically, it's been studied, it improves the testosterone cortisol ratio, very much buffers the inflammatory process and enhances the oxygenation process. So that combination is absolutely powerful and wonderful.
You mentioned before as well about the crossing the blood-brain barrier, and reishi helps to do that as well. Could you just explain how that would potentially tie into relieving pain in potentially the head?
Sure.
And the body, of course.
Well, and when we start looking at the blood-brain barrier, we have it for a reason. We have it to protect the brain. There's more reasons than that. It's also designed to keep what's in the brain and what's in the body. But that is actually a medical problem for things like brain cancer, because the brain says, whoa, I don't want that toxin crossing my blood-brain barrier. And so that makes brain cancer much, much harder to treat. And so we start looking at these different toxins that they give to people. Do they cross the blood-brain barrier? Well, if they do, they're more damaging to the brain, and the brain is going to attempt to protect against it. And so these wonderful natural molecules, absolutely, they cross the blood-brain barrier. They nourish the brain. Numerous studies on Ganoderma and the brain. But, if I were to summarize it in a word or a simple statement, I'd say Ganoderma is really good for the brain. So it's good for serotonin, GABA, dopamine, acetylcholine, and it induces brain stem cells. It's known to be anti-Parkinson's, anti-Alzheimer's, modulates the inflammatory process, can kill off brain viruses, on and on. So very, very powerful. And yeah, it goes across the blood-brain barrier in a healthy and wonderful way that makes the brain better.
I love it. Also, as well, the delivery system. I would just love for you to comment on that, and then I will open up to comments and questions there. Tea and coffee, it doesn't get any easier than that. And I quite bluntly say to my clients, if you can't change your coffee and tea to move yourself into a better state of health, then I wish you luck, because it doesn't get any more accessible for the average person than that. How have you found this as a concept in your clinical practice, Dr. Bob? How effective has it been?
Well, it's the most effective intervention long-term. And I'll share with you, I'm part of a mastermind that I pay a fair amount of money to be part of. And the person that heads it up, heads it up for a reason. He's profoundly successful, creating an amazing life. But, this week, the whole talk has been about habits. And you go back a couple thousand years ago, and Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. And therefore, excellence is going to require, make excellence a habit, excellent choices. Well, when you start looking at coffee and tea, well, maybe a lot of people aren't making the most excellent choices in there. They take what's convenient, and the world drinks coffee and tea, each to the tune of over 2 billion cups every single day. But what if we took a coffee that was better? What if we took one that was alkaline? What if we took one that was infused with this top superfood, reishi, Ganoderma lucidum, or certain teas where the red tea, we've also put in cordyceps. And we say, look, you're doing this anyway. Why not make a healthier choice and see where it goes? I happen to look what Matt had typed in the chat. He says he switched his coffee 10 months ago. And guess what? Headaches are gone. Well, that might just be the tip of the health iceberg. Picking up the immune system. Maybe chronic infection is going away. It's proven against 15 different types of cancer. It alkalizes. It modulates the inflammatory process. It helps the body clear off horrific toxins. And that's how we have over 2,000 published medical studies on it. And people might ask, well, who's doing the studies and why? Well, a lot of them are done by the drug companies. And why? They're trying to find out what is it in this plant that is so powerful, and can we isolate it and make the top drug? And if they could, they would make a top drug. But here's my question. We already know the plant is there. We know it's phenomenal. We know it's safe. We know it's effective. We know it's been used for 5,000 years. Why not do it? Back to coffee and tea. That's pure genius. Why not put it in things where people never need to be reminded, never plan to quit, and with every sip get healthier?
I love it. I think it's one of probably the best health concept ever created, to be honest. We're gifted. We're absolutely privileged to be able to share this with the world and attach it to our business and what we do and what we love to do. So psyched for the future. We have a goal of 100,000 people to impact in the next couple of years. And I'm excited to be able to make that a reality. And it's going to be a really interesting road ahead. And I just want to mention here as well, we have a comment here. I have a CSF leak that caused my migraines, struggling big time, but with the help of Ganoderma Maca and King, I manage most days. Great to hear that.
Yeah. And so, in this case, right, the question is always what's causing the problem? And so can that be corrected? And if it can, let's get it corrected, and where's the leak? How is it diagnosed? What do we do about that? Certainly cerebrospinal fluid is critical. You need it for a healthy brain and a healthy body. And ultimately we want to figure out what's causing that. Now, with that said, people have heard about this term called leaky gut, but I'll tell people we all have a leaky gut. We all have a leaky brain. And in that case, I'm talking about the blood-brain barrier, not a CSF leak. We also have leaky cell membranes, but here's what we know. The healthiest people are the least leaky. And therefore, when we make really good choices across the board in our lifestyle and with things like Ganoderma lucidum, we can improve that leakiness. And, my hope and prayer is that that resolves easily, but if not, find the right doctors that can help you solve that.
Thank you for that. I see Charlene as well has mentioned, what recommendations would be made for people getting migraines from light sensitivity and too much time on the computer?
Well, again, what's causing the problem? Well, if it's too much time at the computer, try to get less. But, there are protective screens that you can put across the computer. There's apps that you can actually control the amount of blue light coming from the computer. And then there are blue blocker glasses, and those seem to be the light rays that are most challenging. So those 3 or 4 suggestions tend to make the most sense to me. But ultimately, if it's the light, buffer the light. If it's too much time at the computer, find ways to not have as much. Now, that might be challenging, but here's what I tell people: use your time wisely and always nourish yourself and prepare yourself and strengthen yourself between times that are going to be stressful. And if you're well nourished, well rested, you can be more efficient. And therefore, hopefully that would cut down the amount of time that you would need to spend in front of the computer.
Great points, Dr. Bob. I see another question here, or a comment from Melissa. My daughter has been struggling with migraines since the age of 5 and have been progressively getting worse to the point where she hasn't been in school for 3 weeks and has had a migraine almost every single day. She's now 17 and still hasn't found what causes them.
Well, we certainly want to figure that out. And, the right team, the right practitioner. I'm not really sure where Melissa lives, but that's a long time, and such prime years of life, 5 to 17. It's just horrific that she's still struggling with that. But let's see if we can figure out where you are and find the right team to get after this. And we talked about buffering stress. There's a stress reset that I like. That's simple. People can do it. It's first do no harm. Toxins, there's a detox protocol. Both these things are on my YouTube channel. That might be a good thing. In terms of malnutrition, we want to make sure that nutrition is good. And let's face it, most 17-year-olds don't have the absolute best diet. And you'd be surprised that there are a lot of food triggers out there, and even moving your body. So, Eric, you being such a master of movement, I'll go back and I'll share my screen for a moment. And there's a study on movement and migraines, and very, very powerful. What we know is that when people move, that will reduce the frequency, intensity, and duration of migraines. 2020 study, and higher intensity has more benefit. So, if we get people moving appropriately and nourishing themselves appropriately and buffering their stress and detoxifying, and ultimately, I'm of the mindset that every challenge can be solved. We just need the right team.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Bob. And if you're in Houston, go see Dr. Bob. If you're not in Houston, I don't know how your interventions would be online with a consultation like that, Dr. Bob, but I'm sure it wouldn't hurt.
Now there's things we can do at a distance, ultimately we need to solve this. I mean, I would make that a very high priority.
Absolutely. So please, Melissa, just touch back with whoever invited you onto the call, connect you with Dr. Bob or myself, and we can help you get better sooner with that. Premi has a question. A friend has migraines and headaches at night. He also grinds his teeth. Only thing brings relief is a wet towel on his head. I think that is not a good, I'm not quite sure what that last sentence is, but a wet towel on your head going to bed at night, Dr. Bob,
I prefer that to a drug, but if someone's grinding their teeth, they have unresolved stress. They call that bruxism. And I do have a video on my YouTube channel about the stress reset, but we can go back to ancient fossil skulls. And I'm amazed at how precisely that they can quantify this. But when they found a skull that had evidence of ground teeth versus that which didn't, that skull was estimated to have died, or the owner of that skull died 15.4 years earlier. So we want to resolve that, and there are people who say, well, let's get a mouth guard. Well, okay, that prevents you from wearing down your teeth, but it hasn't addressed cause and effect. So I do like my stress reset, but maybe there's a little more to it. And here's one thing that, after really looking at stress these last couple of years, and keep in mind, I've taught full day seminars on stress, and stress kills. Stress has always been, in my opinion, the top killer on the planet. But one of the things that's stressful is feeling like you're not in control. So, I've trained with a number of grandmasters, and one of the things that they'll always say is control the controllables. And I do believe we have more control in our life than we do. So can you control what you eat? I promise you can. How about what you drink? Sure. How about what you think? How about in time? Because we got a lot of stuff running in the background that we need to rewrite over. And now brain scans, by the way, show that our brains nearly half the day in every person run on autopilot. So can we reprogram that autopilot and those better thoughts? Yeah, we can. But start taking control of what they can control. And ultimately, let's chisel away at that. And I would certainly recommend a stress reset for this individual. And let's see where it goes.
Beautiful. And that's also it's on your YouTube and also on your Instagram, Dr. Bob. So if you can visit either or channel, you'll see those clearly stated there as well for the recordings. Melissa has another question. What would you recommend for someone to do when they have a migraine, but still want to maintain some sort of activity in order to help with not becoming stiff and stiff with just sleeping?
Well, we're talking functional medicine here, but if someone's got a migraine, they have something they need to do and there's no other option, well, that's where a medication might come into play, but that's not the long-term solution. So if someone has a horrible headache, they can't get away from it, they have something to do, and spending the day in bed is not an option, well, guess what? That's might be where a med goes. But, we had Louise on the call yesterday, and she said, she had auricular acupuncture, a needle in her ear that ultimately just completely resolved her migraines, or near complete. So, start playing around with body points, go to a good practitioner. Ultimately, there is a solution to everything. Let's try to find it. But if someone's stuck, well, can a medication be helpful? It could. It's not my first choice, but I'll tell you what, I don't have migraines, but from what I hear about them, I would probably rather take a pill than deal with the pain.
Pretty severe, absolutely pretty severe. What I've found as well is some cranial mobility and release and gentle working in work. So even if you don't have the energy and spirit and the conditions to do a workout, don't feel guilty for it. Just do what you can do. Just do some gentle mobility. What I find is I'm sitting on a Swiss ball right now. I've replaced my chairs with a Swiss ball. It allows me to move and also to lay in hyperextension over the ball with a supported neck. And just even that relief in itself, I think is delicious to do during the day, multiple times a day, just to gently move the body and realign the spine. I'm for sure you're familiar with the wall tests as well, Dr. Bob, just pulling the shoulders back, tucking the chin, drawing the head down as well is really, really nice for relieving cranial stress as well. It could be a simple relief like that as well, or a simple application of an exercise like that.
Do you have that on your Speed Health page? Because I'll tell you what, I think that is one of the best absolute guides and props. If you're not familiar with the wall test, and by the way, Eric, you show it, but one of the things that my masters taught me to do, also flatten my back against the wall while I force internal hip rotation and shoulder external rotation with the shoulders down and back. That whole body alignment takes a lot of effort. And I'll tell you what, holding that for a minute, profoundly corrective. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah, I did actually do a video for that. Please reach out to me, guys. If you want, I can send that on to you guys to check it out as well. But I find it's great. Yeah, for sure. I find it's great as well to tap. You talk about habits as well earlier. I find it's great to reassess yourself or check in with yourself as well, because it re-teaches the body of its own awareness and also your proprioception as to where you are in space. So if you're more aware of how you're holding your posture, then you can start to improve on those habits that you've built over the years. But I understand we're running short on time here, Dr. Bob. Do you need to run right now? Can you answer one more question?
I'll answer one more, then it's
beautiful.
Back to treating beautiful patients.
So thank you so much for that. Bethany has a question. I've been suffering from monthly migraine headaches either day before or day of my cycle for years. It's like clockwork every month. I plan my life around those days because so many times I've had to cancel life plans. I get adjusted monthly and drink King and Black Daily, which has helped with the added random headaches I would get throughout the month. I've been wondering if there's a certain time of the month I should be getting adjusted in order to work with my cycle.
Well, the answer is maybe, but ultimately recall that the challenge here is the body's ineffective processing of the hormones. And so these hormones aren't going to shift, or sorry, they're going to continue to shift as they do. But what we want to enhance is the body's ability to process them. And the Ganoderma helps with that. I might recommend, just for the fun of it, if they're near your menses, maybe the week of, if you're fairly consistent, start taking 2 spores every waking hour, and maybe even the stress reset, melatonin, theanine, and let's see what happens, because the Ganoderma helps to clear the xenoestrogens, the metalloestrogens, your own estrogens. Then we start throwing in melatonin, theanine, we buffer the cortisol, we have a natural GABA facilitator. That in and of itself may be enough to get you over the, over the hump where this is not a challenge anymore. That certainly would be the goal.
Beautiful. Well, guys, I've just put in my email here. If you want to email me for that wall posture test, please do so. You can copy and paste it now. Dr. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and wisdom with us today. Great call, great information. And I hope that you guys take action on it and share this call with people so they can go out and live their best life by applying this information and becoming a customer of your Reishi products, and also taking those necessary steps to live that active lifestyle. So appreciate you all. I'll leave the last words to you, Dr. Bob, for this call, and we will see you next week. The title for the call, next week, just to let you guys know, is going to be around maternity, getting the body in great shape in order to have your beautiful babies. So we'll be looking at all things around motherhood and prepping for motherhood as well in a holistic way.
Well, I'm going to wrap up with 4 questions. These are from James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh. And here we have them. First question is why? Why'd you take the time to be with us? There's so many other things you could do. Second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not learn about a functional approach that makes individuals better? And I'm going to say even the whole world better. The less we become intoxicated and reliant on unhealthy strategies, the better off we all will be. The next question is, why not you? Someone's going to, apply some of the information that they learned. It might be, getting some of our reishi infused coffee and tea, which I think is always a great idea, but maybe just take more charge of your life and control the controllables. And the final question is, why not now? So here's the reality. The longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are to act on it. We're going to have a replay available for this, and we have another one tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time. That one will be a little different. I really enjoyed these with Eric, a master moderator who just does so much great for the world. I love and appreciate you and Isa. You are amazing souls, and together we're going to make the world better. So if you're in the part of the world where it's evening, good night. If you're in the rest of the day, good day, and God bless all, always.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. See you tonight.
Ciao, everyone.